Ancient Egypt was the most advanced civilization in the Mediterranean world for nearly 3/4 of a millennium, beginning with the country's unity around 3100 BC and ending with Alexander the Great's conquest in 332 BC. Egypt's majesty has long captivated archaeologists and historians, leading to the development of a thriving academic field that is all its own: Egyptology. This fascination began with the construction of the Great Pyramids during the Old Kingdom. It continued through the military conquests of the New Kingdom. The many monuments, items, and artifacts that have been found from archaeological sites and are covered with hieroglyphs that have just lately been deciphered are the primary sources of information about ancient Egypt. The picture that emerges is of society with few rivals in terms of the beauty of its art, the accomplishment of its building, or the richness of the traditions that it upholds in its religious life. Because of the historical treasures, Egypt is known as the country of the pyramids. However, pyramids aren't the only ancient Egyptian monuments. Scientists have continued to develop new and alarming discoveries. What discoveries have scientists and archaeologists made in Egypt that made them worried and perplexed? How terrifying are Egypt's ancient civilizations? Let's look at some of the terrifying discoveries hidden in Egypt. Egypt is one of the oldest civilizations on the planet. The magnificent monuments and records it left behind are still being studied by experts today. Scientists have been unable to make sense of anything they have discovered. As you'll see in a moment, specific findings aren't simply perplexing, they're terrifying. Subterranean Chamber. Archaeologists are still baffled by finding an underground chamber in Giza's pyramid. Egypt's pyramids are among the most imposing man-made structures ever erected. The pharaoh's huge size reflects their importance in ancient Egyptian civilization. They were thought to have been chosen by the gods to serve as their mediators and were stationed halfway between human and celestial realms. In fact, the pyramids were so closely associated with the kings that their smooth angled sides were thought to represent the sun's rays, assisting the king's solar center in heaven in enjoying the gods, particularly Ra, the sun god. What importance did the pyramids have? Pyramids were built for religious purposes. Egypt was one of the first civilizations to believe in the afterlife. They thought that everyone had a second self, which they called the Ka. After the physical body perished, the Ka enjoyed eternal life. The people were worried about the king's safety. As a result, his body was mummified. Everything he'd need in the afterlife, including gold cups, food, furnishings, and other offerings, was buried alongside him. The Giza Pyramid is one of Egypt's most famous buildings. King Khufu's tomb, one of Egypt's early pharaohs, stands 140 meters high and 230 meters long, making it one of its largest. The three principal chambers of the Giza Pyramid that we know about are the King's Room, the Queen's Chamber, and an underground chamber that appears incomplete. There's also the King's Chamber, which is reached via a stunning 47-meter-long corridor. Scientists went out to investigate the inside construction of the pyramid. If there are any previously unknown chambers, cavities, tunnels, tubes, or other features, they used a cosmic technique, but the results left them with more questions than answers. Certain portions, as well as what should have been solid rocks, were obviously empty. They discovered a big void of 30 to 40 meters in diameter. The purpose of the concealed compartment perplexed researchers. The fact that the Giza Pyramid is virtually devoid of the objects that people were typically buried with aroused the attention of experts. They couldn't seem to reach out and touch the abyss, so whatever it previously carried had to be enigmatic. Black Granite Tomb. That isn't all that has been uncovered in ancient Egypt by scientists. The one after this isn't for the faint-hearted. Experts found a 16-foot-deep black granite tomb during the construction of an apartment building in the famous Mediterranean port. The nearly 2,000-year-old burial chamber became an instant internet sensation. After seeing 3 floating bones in the murky soup, villagers only started spreading the idea that the mummified Jews had medicinal or supernatural properties. Others were worried by its peculiar color, mistaking it for the presence of a metal similar to Marie. despite the risk of releasing an old curse by smashing up the gigantic black granite tomb. It was done. Others thought that it harbored the remains of Alexander the Great, the city's founder. The bones could have belonged to a priest, according to Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities. Still, the finding of suspected arrow damage to one of the skulls shows that the bones are probably those of military soldiers. What was this mummy juice exactly? Is it possible that the notion that it had supernatural connotations was true? The answer is, unfortunately, the liquid in question was not mummy juice or red mercury, but something more mundane and unimportant. The mummy juice turned out to be sewage water. The skeletons were partially disintegrated inside. A small hole in the tomb allowed sewage from a nearby structure to leak. But what about the omens that come with revealing the identities of long-dead bodies? It's possible that the legends aren't accurate or that this particular coffin was curse-free. Because the person who was the first to place his head in the casket when it was opened appeared to be in good health. Human hands. You would think that's the end of Egypt's astonishing revelations, but you'd be wrong. While working on the project, archaeologists excavating a palace in Egypt's ancient city of Avaris found a frightening discovery. Researchers unearthed the remains of 16 human hands buried in 4 trenches. One hand was kept in each of 2 pits, one in front of what was supposed to be a throne room. The 14 remaining hands were stored in 2 more holes erected in the palace's outer space at a later era. The fact that they're all right-handed is even more unexpected. There were no left hands discovered. The artifacts were found in the Nile Delta northeast of Cairo and date back roughly 3,600 years to when the Hyksos controlled much of Egypt and erected their capital at Avaris, which is today known as Tel el-Daba. When the hands were buried, one of the Hyksos monarchs, King Khayan, was staying in the palace. These hands could be the earliest tangible evidence of an ancient Egyptian tradition, mentioned in Egyptian text and art, in which a soldier would trade an enemy's cut-off right hand for money. Cutting off an enemy's right hand would have made counting victims easier. Still, it would also have acted as a symbolic act of removing the enemy's power. You deprive him of all authority for the rest of his life. It's unclear whether they belonged to Egyptians or those that Hyksos fought in the Levant. The Egyptians and the Hyksos practiced chopping off an enemy's right hand. One story is recorded on the tomb wall of Ahmose, son of Ibana, an Egyptian fighting the Hyksos. Part of the inscription, written some 80 years after the 16 hands were buried, reads, "Then I engaged in hand-to-hand combat. I drew a hand away from the table. It was brought to the attention of the royal herald. The writer was awarded the Gold of Valor as a reward for his efforts." During a later campaign against the Nubians to the south, Ahmose captured 3 hands and was rewarded gold in double measure. Scientists are baffled about the roots of this heinous practice, given there are no recorded accounts of it in northern Canaan, where the Hyksos are thought to have originated. It could have started somewhere else entirely, or it could have been an Egyptian ritual that they had acquired from Egyptians. As the earliest evidence of this practice, it is vital to remember that the violent treatment of prisoners was not uncommon in ancient Egypt. At the time of ancient Egypt's unification, a 5,000-year-old relic known as the Narmer Palette depicts murdered prisoners and a pharaoh preparing to tread on a man's head on his knees. Another frightening find was a 4,000-year-old Egyptian funeral temple, which included a treasure trove of ancient items, including mummy coffins. The massive burial grounds are located near Memphis, Egypt's ancient capital. The UNESCO World Heritage Site contains more than a dozen pyramids, including Egypt's oldest, the Pyramid of Djoser. Still, one of the most fascinating discoveries was the identity of a 4,200-year-old queen. Archaeologists discovered her tomb near the Pyramid of King Teti. He ruled Egypt between 2680 and 2180 BC during the Age of the Pyramids. Queen Neat, King Teti's wife, has been given the title of an ancient female monarch. Her name was finally found, carved on a temple wall, and a fallen obelisk near the tomb's entrance. That's it for today. What do you think of the video? Tell us in the comment section below. If you like this video, Be sure to like, subscribe, and press the notification bell for future updates on more exciting mysteries. Thanks for watching.